Good morning. LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, and I think I'm streaming on Periscope as well. Oops, I can't go through that. Oops, never mind. Hope you're having a great Tuesday. It is little after 10:20 a.m. in the East Coast. Hope you're having a great Tuesday afternoon or whatever time of day it is on your side of the planet. My name's Frank Lavinia, and you can follow me on any number of social media platforms. On most of them, I'm at Frank Diggs Data, or you can check me out on any one of my websites, which I now have multiple, and another one in the works, if you can believe that. Um, so, one of the things that I have been experimenting with is virtual reality. And I have my Oculus headset there. I have to say, I'm very impressed with it. I'm impressed with the quality of the experience. I'm impressed with a number of things that the way the product is built. I think it's very well done. It has a very well developed app store type of experience that you would expect from something like Facebook or the Google Android store. Um, it has a very similar feel to it. It does take advantage of kind of the virtual reality aspects of it. A couple of interesting things I did. So I managed to, one of the things you can do is you can um, define kind of a safe space to walk around so you don't bump into anything. So I actually kind of did this long, narrow path in the hallway in my house. And it was really cool. It was in the virtual kind of home screen environments. You can kind of walk through that environment like you're there. Now, that may not sound like a big deal, but most of the space that you tend to have is that 6 by 8 type of thing that they recommend. But I was able to get it to maybe about 20 feet. So I was actually able to walk around this ski chalet and this kind of cyberpunk apartment. So it was pretty cool, actually. Part of me wants to, like, just clear out my garage completely and just like use that as a virtual reality studio. Part of why this kind of came up was there was some guy who was did a video on YouTube about kind of this 360-degree treadmill, and that is the way to walk around kind of these virtual spaces. I'm not sure that technology is going to take a while, but I will say that it does produce. If you use the joysticks to kind of while you're standing to move around, that does mess with your I don't know, messes with your like nausea and motion sickness. Never get motion sickness. I think I've been motion sickness twice in my life. One time was when I was playing Portal after having dental surgery. Um, Apparently, the pain meds messed with. It was not a good scene. Let's just put it that way. The other time I had it is when I used oh god, what was it called? Rec Room, and Rec Room was cool, but I had to stop using it because I'm gonna try again sitting down because sitting down and moving seems to be a better for me uh, than walking, than standing and kind of moving with the joystick, but not actually moving in place. Maybe it's because I've been acclimated. You sit down in a car or a train or a plane, you're moving. That might work better. It's a fascinating kind of problem to solve in the sense that you don't have to think about motion sickness generally when you write a regular you know browser based or Windows based or Mac based application, and of course Linux. How could I forget Linux? So, but that is not the topic of the day. Um, the topic du jour. Oh yeah, you can follow me on Instagram and Twitter at Frank Diggs Data. Um, it's Tuesday, and you know what that means? High Impact Tuesday. Again, it's High Impact Tuesday, and feel free to ask me any questions. But I will start this off by sharing a screen. Here we go, of the things that I think are going to have the most amount of impact in our world and in our lives in the technology space. There's a lot of other crazy stuff going on in the world. I don't want to talk about that. It's having an impact. But in terms of this, is that I don't know if you've been tracking kind of um, the OpenAI Codex stuff, but it's fascinating in the sense that you basically can kind of describe verbally or text, or whatever, and use natural language to define what code would look like. And what's fascinating here is, we tell kids, we teach kids how to code, and we do this, and we do that. Hey, Andy, my brother from another mother. If you're up for it, man, we can make this a dual live show, and we can kind of talk about some cool stuff. Just let me know. Hit me up on the normal means of communication. I'll send over the link. Which I think is, awesome. I will give me 1 second. I even have my headphones on already, so I can take a guest. That goes for anyone else out there. In Twitchverse, YouTube land, LinkedIn, of course. So while Andy's getting in, I'll kind of say why I think this is going to be a big impact. I don't think we're at the point where, actually, Thomas, you read my mind. I don't know. I honestly don't know. Like, will OpenAI Codex replace human programmers? So if you're not familiar with the technology, it will take OpenAI Codex will basically take natural language and convert that to computer code. And I think in this particular example, it's messing with CSS or whatever. I don't know. I don't know if it'll replace them outright, but I think it's definitely going to alter the job market. That kind of worries me, because if you're a software engineer today, and we have all these people that are banking their hopes and their dreams on hey, Andy.
Hey, Frank.
How's it going?
Good, brother. How are you?
I'm doing all right. So this is that segment I do called High Impact Tuesdays.
I know. I'm excited to be. I think it's the first one I've been on.
I think it is. I haven't done a High Impact Tuesday on an actual Tuesday in quite some time, and I haven't done a High Impact Tuesday for a while as well. So, this is to, if you have any low impact slacker in you, this is to exercise it, not exercise like on a treadmill, but exercise like, The Exorcist. There's a story behind that.
Pretty cool. No, I love this. I love the whole idea about open source. You know that. I'm a huge open source fan. I still lament the demise, for the most part, of CodePlex. I think that was a really cool spot where, as a Microsoft developer, you could put code up. And you can still do that. And I mean, you can put Microsoft code on GitHub or any of the other open
Microsoft
source.
Even bought GitHub. I think
they did. Yeah.
I think CodePlex was an awesome idea, but you have to remember the context of the time of CodePlex was it was led by someone. Microsoft was led by someone who thought open source was evil incarnate.
Yeah, and they were, for better or worse, their idea behind it was that they were going to compete with it and, kind of win. So what I love about open source is that everybody can win, and I'm glad to see. I mean, right after Satya took over, actually before that, I think when they hired Hanselman, you started seeing efforts where Microsoft engineers were actually contributing to open source projects, and that became I remember it hit data around 2012, I want to say, in that neck of the woods. They started contributing to Hadoop, the open source Hadoop projects that were out there. And that's when I first learned that they turned the corner on open source. It's great. I don't want to distract from OpenAI. I want to learn more about it. That's one of the reasons when you invited me to come here.
Cool.
I said yes. Frank and I are in different specialties. I don't know all of the stuff that he knows. There's some overlap in the Venn or Euler or whatever diagram you want to draw. But I'd say it's probably about 50-50. Frank knows, I'll say it this way. I think Frank knows about a lot of stuff that I don't know about, a lot more than I know that he doesn't know. So tell me more about
vice versa.
Well, tell me more about OpenAI, Frank.
I think whether it's Euler or Venn, I think we should change it to Venn diagram and just have pictures of Vin Diesel like wearing different hats. I think, or see,
if only we knew somebody who was good at Photoshop.
So one, I want to close the loop on the open source thing because cool Yoda mug, by the way.
Oh,
Although I imagine that's green, he's green, and you're on a green screen. So if you ever
I don't. Well, I don't have the
photography-
green screen work. Green
right,
screen
right. I
working
can
right
just
now.
imagine you'd have this
Right.
invisible cup.
But it would be, and this is from my favorite. It's a gift from my favorite mother-in-law.
Oh, cool.
Yeah,
Awesome.
she's awesome.
So I think for me, my aha moment for open source was the demise of Silverlight, because Silverlight is a great platform. I think it was a great platform of its time. It was basically filling a need that Flash didn't fill and HTML didn't fill at the time. And I think that open source becomes, you can't have one person in a corner office kill it. An open source project. You need, the whole community has to kind of die down, and
Yeah.
when that happens, there's a lot of telegraphing of that things are kind of ending. And I think two examples to highlight is Hadoop, right? Hadoop is kind of like, they all kind of realized that Spark is the future.
Sure.
And it was more of a collective decision. And when the host organization, I'm thinking of Node.js, right? When they weren't happy with how the company was handling the evolution of the platform, what did they do? They kind of revolted and kind of, forced the conversation. So I think those are two things I think we wish we had the option with Silverlight rather than that Thanos snap where it was just gone.
Yeah.
Because as I like to say, Silverlight developers, they started the 2011 as rock stars and ended 2011 as rocks looking up at the stars. Now that's a high impact.
That was a high impact. Yes.
So OpenAI Codex is basically, OpenAI is the Elon Musk kind of funded AI lab that is most famous for producing the GPT-3 algorithm and GPT-2, which produced very realistic human language. And one of the things that they've also released is called Codex, which lets you define what the software, you can define software requirements and then turn that into code with natural language. Now, I think the $1 million question, which I think is obviously the one that's fear triggered, because if software development jobs go away, that's not good for a lot of folks, particularly folks who were told, when their more traditional industries were falling out of favor or on hard times, they were told to learn how to code. And that's that's been the mantra, at least here in the US, for a number of years, is learn to code, and go to coding boot camp, change your life.
Sure.
Which totally can happen.
Yeah.
But what's going to happen when those people experience my job's been automated away.
And the thing about that is we tend to automate what we know.
Right.
So as developers, and I mean, I work a lot with SSIS and Azure Data Factory, and I play around a lot with code generation tools like BIML, Business Intelligence Markup Language, and stuff like that. But when I started automating, that's what I went after. How do I automate the execution, the lifecycle management of SSIS and Azure Data Factory? So data integration, data engineering, that's kind of my thing. And so whenever something new shows up, I look at it with an eye towards how do I do that. So I think one result of that is going to be not that, bank tellers are automated away or something like that. I think it's more going to be people like you and me. I think the AIs will eventually design AIs. But
I think
we're
that there's definitely a danger of that. I mean, I think one of the things I used to tell when I used to do the public affairs stuff for Microsoft, or would do kind of these teach kids how to code type stuff, I would be one of the speakers, and I would just be like, this is a field that requires constant learning.
Yes.
And if you're not okay with that, this probably isn't the place for you.
Yeah.
And the teachers would give me like that evil eye, like, and I say, I don't say that like, just because this. I mean, you can certainly start here, and you'll make good money, you'll make great money, but you're going to be burnt out in 5-10 years, and there's a lot of evidence that happens.
Right.
And I'm just saying, like, the days, and basically what, I kind of follow up with the days where you go to school, you learn something, and then once you get your diploma or certificate or whatever, you can kind of just sit in a cubicle, put this, on pause, and then spend 30 years on that cubicle are gone. I mean, that's a relic in the past. And
for the most part, there's some things I think that until until we develop better and more actuators. And that's actually not original with me. That's from our show we did with Kevin Hazard.
Oh yeah. Brilliant guy. We should have him on a live stream and have him on the show again.
Kevin he's super busy. He is with a large corporation that has a group of architects, data architects, software architects, and that. And he is the enterprise architect. He is the architect of architects.
Nice.
And they can't pay that man enough. I mean,
he's a very deep thinker. Like he is. Like, he's a very, like, I remember I think there was it was one of the Microsoft builds or check it. Yes, Thomas, lifelong learning.
Yes, I saw what I was giggling at.
Yes. That's the ticket. I think it was the one in Anaheim where they announced Windows 8 and stuff like that, and and it was up. Windows 8 was kind of like 90% of the show, but he was asking deep questions about kind of the 10% and WCF and kind of what does it look like when you have these kind of microservices type like. And I think he was also the guy that said most of our data software, again, not necessarily true anymore, but I mean the traditional kind of SQL, Oracle, DB2 is written when the assumption was that these were on spinning disks. And what does a database look like when it's no longer the case? When it's not a fantastic
post out there. I'll have to see if I can find it, but it's on DevJourney.com.
That's his blog, right? DevJourney.
That's his blog. And that's one of he doesn't blog a lot anymore because he's super busy. He's also got grandkids now, so when he's not at work, he's playing with the grandkids. And super smart guy. He wrote a book. I've got a copy of it, but I forget, but it's along the lines of code that generates code. It was that sort of thing. Metaprogramming, yes, that's it.
Yes. I read that when I was writing. This goes back a ways. When I was writing an app that wrote Windows 8 apps.
Yeah.
That would basically, I wrote a thing. It was called App Cannon. I called it App Cannon, but then the team called it Shazap. And I don't know what the source code for that went, but basically it was if you could go through a browser.
Yeah.
And point it to a URL, tell it what to look for, and it would convert that into a Windows 8 app. Now, the reason why that was is because it was on Windows 8 public sector.
Right.
And, anything online that a city puts out or a town or a government agency is, there's no copyright issues. So
I am tapping because it's like, this sounds so familiar.
Yeah, and that was when I was doing the, Dingo. Parts of Dingo, and if you're familiar, what the heck is he talking about? So Dingo is which I wish I had OpenAI Codex so I can kind of like tell it what I want to do and produce the code. Dingo is a content. I'm calling it a meta content management system because it's not replacing WordPress. It's meant to bring together things from YouTube, things from potentially Channel 9. Like I've already written that code. That's part of the content tooling system that powers Frank's World Data Driven and a few other things. But Dingo, I want to be kind of the thing that brings it all together. So I have one interface to rule them all. And I was talking to you this morning because like I built it out like, a lot of content across different sites just with Dingo. And it turns blogging from kind of a laborious process to much simpler. And
automation, baby.
Automation. Can't beat automation. So I will definitely have to check out that link. I don't think I can click the link now.
Yeah, but, I saw that too. I'm with you. I want to learn more about it. But I think that was something that Mark Tabb also mentioned is that we will likely automate ourselves, the jobs that we know first. He mentioned that.
Right.
I keep remembering all of this stuff from Data Driven, but and it's wild to me. That was, I think, both of those guys were like season 1, season 2, and now here we are, season 5, a couple, 3, 4 years later, talking about the concepts that they brought up, back then. They're still ahead of their time, both of them, and a lot of our guests, because we don't pick slouches to be guests.
Mark Tab is also like one of those guys. He's definitely ahead of his time.
Yeah, Mark Tabadillo, for those of you who are looking for that. Let's see. I keep you're sitting on a workshop goal.
It's true. It's true. We should DM me, Thomas, on LinkedIn, and Andy too, and we can kind of talk about that, because there's some machinations in progress for kind of workshops and things like that.
We got to pick that back up. We did something a few years ago that I thought went well. It was small, but it went well, and we keep, we've tossed around the idea. We just got to, Frank's key word is execute, and I need to execute as well, and we need to just bring this stuff up and do something about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's like other stuff too. Like I got an email the other day, and I was like, no. This is a divine kick in the pants, basically. I don't usually toot my own horn. I try not to. Others may disagree. But speaking of lifelong learning, I don't know if you follow me on Instagram, but I am currently on a 341-day, actually I guess still got to do today, learning streak on Pluralsight.
Yeah.
So I like learning. Like,
yeah,
it's something I enjoy.
Go ahead, Frank. Sorry.
Oh, no. So it's funny. Like I was basically in my new job at Coverse. My manager was like, I'm trying to get my hands on Coverse training material, and he's like, yeah, kind of like sarcastically, yeah, I know how much you hate learning new things. Like, I was funny. Just like, if you got to have a reputation when you join a company, like that's a good one to have. Is it just obsessed with
some of our listeners may know that I've been going down the path of studying and trying to get better about habit tracking and stuff like that. And I've started bullet journaling, and I've got a habit tracker in there. And on there, I've got 2 items that are, one is help somebody every day, and number 2 is to learn. So I don't have a cool tracker like you do. You're using Pluralsight, and I know they do a lot of that. Yeah, they do that for you, which is awesome. And I always like on Instagram when you post those screenshots of what day your streak is up to. I'm trying to do the same thing. Try to learn something every day. Try to help somebody every day.
Yeah, you can follow me on Instagram here. I'll put that up. But the funny thing is like people are like, oh, your goal is 365. And I'm like, you know what? Actually, originally the goal was 40 days. Then it was 100 days. And then it became like, well, 300 days. And then, now the goal is not 365, not even 366, because last year was a leap year. It's actually 1,000, because I want to see what the UI does when we get to 4 digits.
Yeah, and speaking of goals, Frank inspired us he inspired me to do something that he's been doing for a while. And I believe, I can't remember which family member did this, but we're less than 50 days away from the end of our new year.
That's right.
Which is
48
November
days,
1st to start. 48, yeah. So
I have a calendar on the wall that's like a dry erase calendar. Every month I put the normal date and as well as a countdown, because that was inspired by, sorry I cut you off.
Oh, good. No,
that was inspired by I don't know, some inspirational Instagram post where it's like, if clocks every day counted down the hours rather than counted up,
right,
would you approach the day differently? And I was just like, yes, I would. Yep. So that kind of reminds me, like, time is going. Like, time is the currency of our lives. Like, time is, I don't know. I'll figure out some kind of prize. But if you can catch this quote, "Time is the fire in which we all burn."
I like it.
Remember that movie? Where that was from a movie quote. Not a great movie, an anticipated movie, but not a great movie.
Which movie?
It was from Star Trek Generations. So now that I've said it, there's no prize. Sorry. But yeah. So and then it was, somebody said that I was listening to something this morning. It was like the currency of our lives are the seconds that fly by, or something like that.
Yeah.
It was far more poetic than I, but yes, 10,000 hours to master a new skill. Actually, there's some interesting data about that. It turns out that the first 80% or 85% to good enough or better than good enough is far less than 10,000 hours. The 10,000 hours to be like Olympic level, like top 1% in the world to master that new skill. That is true. But the curve, you get a lot of bang for your buck pretty quickly. Like, I think there's another book called The First 20 Hours or something like that, which kind of implies that you really get a big boost in the first 20 hours and then the following 100 hours. And then, so it's about 1,000 hours where you can be better than most people. If you want to compete in the Olympic level, like, no, that does require 10,000 hours. But I think that's a Malcolm Gladwell thing too. 10,000
I think
hours.
so. I think it was from Outliers. I'm not positive of that, but that was a good book. Like all of Malcolm Gladwell's books, there's people who criticize him, and people who enjoy some topics better than others.
He's very much like Taleb that way. Like, he's very. People love him or they hate him.
I see him more as a curator. If you approach Malcolm Gladwell as kind of like a curator of, I won't say anecdote. Every time somebody says anecdotes these days, they say it in a negative term. And I'm like, I'll just go on record here saying all data starts as an anecdote. I'm just going to say that. And it's not until it's collected and analyzed that you are able to say that it's beyond that stage. So when somebody says to me it's anecdotal data, I say, and?
Right.
Is it being analyzed?
It's kind of like raw meat, right? Or like raw ingredients. Like, there's nothing. I don't know, maybe there's something there, maybe there isn't. There's actually a whole thing. I think I did a data point on it, actually. It was about Jeff Bezos. Where there used to be a thing when, I don't know if he still does it because he's not at Amazon anymore, but there was this whole thing where if you got an email from him with a question mark, there was this whole thing. Just do a search on the story of like one character emails from Jeff Bezos and like what that causes. And then basically his kind of thing is like, these complaints that he would get or what he would hear about would, maybe they're anecdotal, but there's always something behind anecdotal data points. I think that was kind of his point. And he's done well for himself.
Yeah, he's done okay.
Yeah. I mean, he has to make do with, a couple $100 billion minus the divorce, but, we all are sacrifices.
Those things happen. Anecdotally.
But what else was I going to say? So I think this OpenAI Codex thing, I think it's one of those threats that's maybe just over the horizon. But if you kind of think about science fiction, then, there was a number of the Star Trek episodes, the Deep Space Nine, Next Generation kind of era, even Voyager 2, where they would talk to the computer and the computer would do stuff. And it's not just like, like Alexa, turn on the lights, but it would be like, run the simulation with, 10 times the gravity or whatever.
Right.
And like, you can kind of see like, you basically use your voice to, or words to kind of describe what an interface would look like. And then the AI would do it, would execute on that. And I think maybe part of that is our assumption that there's consuming software and then there's writing software. Yeah. I think that wall is going to that line's going to get a lot blurrier. And you see that already with Power Apps. You see that with Citizens Data Science.
Going to say
it's not as clear cut as it used to be. And I don't know. I think that, like Thomas said, lifelong learning, learning, baby. I mean, that's how you do it. I mean, there was somebody who said that, oh God, who was it? It might've been Malcolm Gladwell, but it was like somebody like of his type. He was basically saying that learning is the literacy of the 21st century.
Yeah, that's fair.
I like the way he said that. I like the way that positions kind of the notion of learning. And that is something that anecdote one angry, count to four. I'm very, I like that.
That's
I
good.
like that. I will admit that my kids have a vocabulary that they should not have at their age, um, but so yeah, so I'll show off our newest site in the family, which I think I've announced before, but just in case, Impact Quantum. And right now, the site is, if you go here, it'll show you kind of a LinkedIn article about how quantum computing could prevent another AI winter. It gets into what AI winter is and all that, in case you don't know. But here's kind of the exciting part is, kind of what I've been doing is I've been curating the latest news about quantum computing and developments in this space and posting it. And pretty rapidly, too. I think I have like 3-4 posts today.
Nice, Frank.
6 pages of stuff, and it's only launched the last week in August.
Very cool.
This is basically powered by a dingo. So a lot of interesting stuff happening in the quantum space right now. Don't worry, the podcast is coming back too. I actually lined up with a few guests because I'm at the point where like I have my limited understanding here. Like it's just because it's hard. I mean, it's hard, but I say that in a way that's not necessarily. It's not meant, when I say it's hard, it's not meant to discourage. It's meant to encourage. Like if you're going to run a marathon, you don't start off a marathon. Like you don't start off by running 26 miles. You start off by running a 5K, then a 10K. Just know that there's a pretty long walk on that one. And actually, there is. This is going to be on the blog later today. I'm going to highlight this. No, that's not it. This is the one I want. Am I sharing it? Because I think that as the paradigm shifts for computing, there's some interesting kind of skills to develop because, how to prepare for the quantum world and, the skills that are needed. And a lot of these are skills that we already do. I mean, if you're a lifelong software engineer, you've already got that.
Yeah.
If you're in the data and AI space, you're already there. We talk at length about open source. And, I like to think I'm good at analytical reasoning.
I think you are, but I'm biased.
Some may not agree with you and me. But I mean, I would say that, there's going to be part of this. Part of this is going to be kind of new, right? Because it is a new field. I think the opportunity here is huge. All right.
So
Let me see. What'll happen if I put a quote that big here? Okay, cool. It does show it. Systems like Codex may fail when they are pitted against a skilled human developer. But as Codex and its ilk improve, humans who transform themselves into centaurs by combining their skills with advanced AI are likely to become more powerful and perhaps unstoppable technological force. And that's Thomas Smith, co-founder and CEO of Gatto Images. Yeah, I mean, that's true. I mean, one of the things that you do hear a lot is, the top line, top of the fold narrative for here is humans versus AI. But kind of buried in that is, well, what if it's humans plus AI?
Right.
There's definitely, I mean, if you look at kind of what we've done, and this is just a minuscule example of the potential there, is what we've done with our voiceover, actress or virtual actress now, or voiceover artist, whatever they're called. We're able to use AI and a little bit of human creativity to create a different type of experience versus before, theoretically, I mean, if we wanted to have a custom kind of intro for each podcast, it would cost at least $55. I think our prices are up now. He's got into the music writing business or songwriting business. I mean, it would be $55 a show. And it's just like, not sure about that. Yes. Assisted intelligence versus artificial intelligence. I like that. I've also heard the term augmented intelligence bandied around.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, no, I think it's one of those things where if you, it's just like anything else. I mean, I when I was in school, my college professors were all ex IBM, like distinguished engineers and all that. So
Mm.
to hear them talk in the early to mid '90s, I mean, OS2 was going to just change the world. I mean, you know, that didn't happen.
Right.
And if you're out there and you're young enough, or you're not old enough to remember, you're like, what's OS2? You've just proved my point. Not that it was a bad product. It's just there was a lot of, I'm sure many books have been written about kind of why that went the way it did, and it just did,
Yeah.
Um, but that having been said, the fruits of OS2, I mean, Windows 10 is based on the Windows NT kernel, which, depending on the lawyers you speak to, definitely has it has some relationship to the OS2 project and some of the decisions that were made at the time. Whether or not there's code or not, I don't know. Wasn't there? Not gonna touch that one. But I mean, it's one of those things where there are good ideas, and while that implementation of said idea doesn't materialize, the idea lasts and grows. I mean, a good example would be my work with tablet PCs. In fact, if you look here, go. That's my old license plate when I lived in Virginia.
Yeah.
Tablet. I was a tablet PC MVP, and it was a good idea. It's just that the iPad did it better, and I bet on the wrong horse, not platform wise, but I thought it would come that powerful devices, powerful kind of laptop like devices would become more mobile. What actually ended up happening was the mobile devices became more powerful. Now you may say that that's semantics, and I guess to a certain point it is. But iOS is radically different and architectured very differently than, say, the Mac OS. And the Android OS is very different than Linux. Yeah, I know they have a common thing. Don't send me hate mail, but um, I'm just saying that the chipsets that power mobile are very different than the x86 chipsets that power kind of
Right.
traditional computing. So
Yep.
the good ideas lasted. I mean, you can
Yeah.
go days without using a traditional PC or desktop, um, and just do stuff on your iPad. Now, obviously, there's a limitation to that, but
Sure.
speaking of high impact, I would say the Apple making their own M1 chip. There's a whole documentary, and it's actually in Frank's World somewhere, so I could find it. With Apple becoming kind of a chip maker, I mean, they basically, there it is. Apparently, the search engine works too very nicely. Um, this is a fascinating documentary by this Cold Fusion, which I think they're in Australia. Basically explains how the M1 happened and why it
Hmm.
happened. And I learned quite a bit kind of about all of that. And I think there were a lot of people, like the CEO at the time of Intel, did not believe that mobile would have the staying power that it has. I think they just assumed that batteries would get better, and your phone would be a miniature laptop. What I think
Right.
is really surprising people is that the RISC approach, or ISC, versus the CISC, and that's a topic for another day, ended up being a better solution for low power consumption and things like that. It's a fascinating thing because I remember being a big believer in RISC architecture
Yep.
when I was in college, when I first learned about it, and I'm like, why isn't everybody using this? It's much more efficient and much more powerful. And I think IBM had the Power PC chips, which powered the generation of Macintoshes. Um, and this kind of gets into this, where that kind of fell short.
Yeah.
But it's
But it was
interesting.
a great idea.
But the idea lasted. The
Yeah.
implementation of said idea, I mean, obviously, PowerPC chips never took over, the Wintel or Intel market, but your phone has a RISC chip in it, and I don't know, enough to say it always had, but I mean, the M1 is a RISC-based chip, and if you see what the kind of the M1 based PowerBook has and how light it is, it's going to start. You're going to start wondering, well, what's the difference between mobile and desktop at this point? Like it's going to be a moot point. I mean, the only difference is probably going to be price point,
Right.
because I don't, if you just look at, if you want to get a laptop versus buy a desktop, you can, for the same amount of money, get better performance on the desktop. Now you do that at the sacrifice of portability, but it's what it is. For this rig here, I have no anticipation of making it mobile because I have a laptop to do it. And I think that's the other thing too, is that, multiple devices is a thing now, which at one point was considered impossible, because it's probably just like TVs, right? At one point, everyone had the family TV, everybody gathered around. And then
now we watch our phones.
Now we watch our phones. Yeah. And I was lucky in the sense that my dad repaired TVs for a living. So we were able to get kind of discarded stuff and he would just fix it. Nice. And I had like a colored 19-inch TV in my room as a kid, which was like, that was kind of a big deal.
That was big time. Yeah.
That's like having an Alienware laptop in your nah, maybe a desktop, not as swanky as but thank you, Thomas, for commenting. Definitely some interesting. I'm definitely going to check out that link for sure. So the reason why, Andy, I call it High Impact Tuesdays is that sometimes you start your week on Monday, you start the week, and you're all psyched, you're all stoked.
Sure.
And then Monday kind of punches you in the face.
Yeah. I feel it.
Tuesday. Thank you, Thomas.
Yep. Thanks, Thomas.
Tuesday's your day to get back up, dust yourself off, and push forward. You still got 4 days to rock the week.
Great way to go.
So,
I'm like Thomas. I have to run as well. Thank you, Frank, for inviting me to join you on High Impact Tuesday. This was outstanding.
Awesome. And here is our contact information for Twitter. Yeah, and I'll catch you all later. I'm going to roll some fancy outro graphics. What do you think about that, Andy?
Awesome.